Well, good morning. Welcome to the June 23rd, 2020 Blue Earth County Board of Commissioners meeting. We are going to start this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We'll go to our agenda review, Bob.
Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda this morning.
Landcamer moves the agenda.
People seconds.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Jesse, could you call a roll, please?
Commissioner People,
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis,
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder,
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer,
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg.
Aye. And we'll go right to planning and zoning. George?
Good morning, George.
Good morning, George. Morning, George.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PC 06-20 is a request from Kurt Winkle, Richard Winkle, Kenneth Winkle, and Clarice Roseberry. It's a request for review and approval of an ordinance amendment to the official zoning map of Blue Earth County to rezone the southern 30 acres of the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 4 Beaufort Township from light industrial to agricultural. Mr. Leary presented the report. The Planning Commission members had no objections to the request. Following the discussion and a roll call vote, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward to the County Board a recommendation of approval of the request to amend the official zoning map of Blue Earth County by rezoning the southern 30 acres of the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 4 Beaufort Township to A, agricultural, with the findings prepared by staff. The board action is the ordinance amendment to the official zoning map of Blue Earth County.
All right. And this is a public hearing. So anybody who wishes to speak on PC 06-20, please speak on this. If there's anybody on the phone that wishes to talk.
Oh, just a moment, sorry.
This is Blaine now, just logged in.
Go ahead.
Hi, well, I don't know if you can hear me or not. The meeting, Gerald Lodamp and I are here to listen to the hearing.
That's actually for the next hearing.
Thank you, Blaine. I believe that you're here for a drainage hearing, and we're considering a planning and zoning item at this time. So if you'd if that's okay, if you'd
That's
stay on the
okay.
line, we'll get to the drainage item in a moment.
Yep. We'll get to you soon, okay?
Do I, how do I mute and unmute myself?
I can mute you on this end until we allow for public comment.
Okay, the last hearing we ran on June 6th, I could unmute myself too if I wanted to jump in. It was star 6 or something, if I recall. Is it the same this time?
It probably is.
That would do it.
Star 6. Great.
All right.
Go ahead and mute us, and if we need to star 6 in, we'll do it. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to PC 0620? Anyone?
Did you just start, or what happened here? I just got through.
All right. Does he want us to talk on the PC 0620?
This is Jesse Anderson, and I'm at the board meeting. Right now, the item for consideration is a planning and zoning application. The drainage hearings will follow this hearing. So if you have comments regarding the planning and zoning issue, please state your name and address for the record. And if not, we will get to the drainage items next.
I'm here for the drainage ditch.
All right. Yep, this is all hard for all of us. We understand that we're not used to this whole calling in phone thing, but we really appreciate what you're doing, and if you just kind of bear with us, we're going to try to get through a planning and zoning issue, okay?
I don't have any choice.
All right, one more time, does anybody wish to speak to the planning and zoning PC 0620? Hearing no one, I'll bring it back to the board.
Brunder will move approval.
Perfect seconds.
I got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Brunder here. It was pretty straightforward. It was a phone conference call, but pretty easy amendment to make, so didn't have anybody testify at the meeting.
All right. Anyone else? It seems to me like we're always changing it from ag to industrial or residential, and this is almost like it's falling backwards, which to me is a positive thing that we're actually going back into ag. So I how can somebody argue this part, I guess? Mm-hmm. All right. If there's no one else, Jesse, you want to call a roll?
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. All right. Is there anything else, George?
No, sir.
All right, well, that is the end of planning and zoning. Thank you very much, George.
Thanks, George.
All right. So now, we're going to JD 17, and I will start it out. Good morning. Our hearing today is the final hearing on the proposed improvement to JD 17. The purpose of this hearing is to consider the petition for the drainage project with all matters pertaining to the detailed survey report and the viewers' reports. Since we may have public calling in on the conference call line, I would ask that staff and others introduce themselves prior to speaking. Additionally, can anyone else joining the meeting please identify themselves? And we will now have the drainage staff go over the judicial documents.
Moment, he's on.
All right.
Hello?
All right. First of all, we're going to go over some formal documents, okay?
Okay.
Thank.
This is Craig Osmondson, Blue Earth County Drainage Manager.
Go ahead, Craig.
We have jurisdiction. Okay. For the jurisdictional documents, we have a hearing notice that was mailed to landowners on June 1st, 2020. The hearing notice was published in the Free Press on June 2nd, June 9th, and again on June 16th. The hearing notice was also posted at the courthouse. Normally we have a DNR report at this time, but DNR has not provided an advisory report on the final engineer's report. The advisory report is not required to approve this project. The engineer will address this during his report. And that's it for jurisdictional documents.
Thank you, Craig. And we will now hear from the petitioner's attorney. And would you please introduce yourself for those listening in the conference call? Do we have the attorney here?
I think he's in the
Is he in the hallway?
Somebody put us on hold.
Morning.
Good morning. You're up. Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
I'm Bruce Sellers. I'm the petitioner for attorney for the petitioners for JD 17. We are here this morning for the final engineering report. The petition was filed in, I believe it was April, possibly, I believe, of 2018. Mr. Brandel completed a final engineering report. Hearing was held The board accepted the final or that preliminary engineering report, excuse me, and appointed or ordered him to do a detailed survey. Viewers were appointed to do a determination of benefits and damages, and I believe also a redetermination of benefits. And so those reports, I believe, will be heard today. I would defer any comment at this time and let Mr. Brandel present his final engineering report. I believe what you'll hear is that it's feasible. The costs do not exceed the benefits. It is practical. It's in the public benefit to do this. It is needed. There are many issues in this system. It is needed. And so after Mr. Brandel presents his report, if necessary, I may give a few more comments, but for now I would defer to Mr. Brandel.
Thank you very much. We will now hear from the engineer. Would you please introduce yourself for those listening on the conference line?
This is Chuck Brandel with ISG. I have Jen Whitmer with me. We're going to tag team the presentation here. Just to confirm some dates, the prelim hearing was back in August of last year. I believe we were appointed in early 2019. So we're here for the final engineer's report for JD 17. The current slide that we are showing shows kind of the procedure of the project. We've gone through, we've had feasibility study, we looked at different options. Landowners considered probably 3 different options on this system. We decided to go with a slightly less capacity than what we typically do, just from a cost standpoint. And when the viewers present their benefits, you'll see why, because the project barely, it meets the criteria, but not by much. So we're at the final hearing stage. We did have a landowner meeting, I believe it was May 28th, near the end of May. It was an online meeting. We had a pretty good turnout for that. We went over the project, went over costs. We presented our report, and the viewers presented their information. So a little bit about JD 17. It's about a 600-acre watershed, pretty much all row crops, all in Garden City Township. It was originally constructed in 1917. The outlet's been replaced twice because of erosion. And as part of this project, we're going to add some riprap around the outlet again, just to make sure that we don't have erosion into the ravine that it drains into. So I'm going to let Jen go over the existing and proposed conditions. Go ahead.
So the existing system's an unusually extensive public drainage system. It has 23 branches and 24 laterals. You can see it zigzags across the watershed. This is the main line. So let's see. The existing capacities are below a 0.3 inch per day. What we recommend is about 3/8 inch per day to 0.5 inch per day for modern drainage, and it's 103 years old and deteriorating. In 2017, we televised portions of the system to see what condition the tile was in, and we found a lot of pipe deformations, cracks, pipe close to collapsing in areas. It's filled with debris and some pipe intruding into the side.
If I could just add one thing, recently there was after the landowner meeting, there was one of the landowners said there was a blowout on the system. I believe Ryan went out with a contractor, Ryan Hineker, and found that it was in very, very poor shape, and they had to fix more than just one spot. So they just patched it at this point, knowing that this process is going forward. So the system is in very poor shape.
And here we have the existing drainage capacities, and this is as it was constructed, so it doesn't take into consideration any of the cracks or misalignments or debris that's currently in the tile. This is the drainage coefficient for some of the branches and laterals. They're a pretty high drainage coefficient, but that's because each branch and lateral drains a really small portion of the watershed. So we have two proposed options. The first one, we split the main line so it stays on the west side of the system. So it goes from the outlet up to here, and then we have branch one that stays on the east side. We realigned it a little bit so that it only crosses CASA 38 once, and that was a request from the road authority and the county engineer, and it lowers project costs. And option one has a pond at the outlet of the system. Option two has the same alignments and drainage tile size, but with no pond at this end. And we designed the system to have about a 0.4 or minimum 0.4 drainage capacity. Like Chuck said, it's to reduce project costs. Here's the proposed storage pond for option one. It provides about 10 acre-feet of storage, and it's directly at the outlet of the system because it's a pretty small watershed. Here's a plan profile sheet of the outlet. The proposed tile is about 12 to 15 feet deep, and that's because the existing system's pretty deep and we needed to be below that. And we will rip-wrap this berm at the outlet to protect from any erosion. We did some hydraulic modeling on the proposed system and the existing system with and without the pond. With the pond, it reduces flow rates out of the system 5 to 40%. And without the pond, it slightly increases to 14% increase without a pond, down to a 5% reduction, depending on the size of the storm. Cost and separable maintenance. We tallied up the cost it would take to repair the system, which is about $1.5 million. From the viewers, we got a benefit of $1,040,000. So there aren't enough benefits in the system to repair the existing system, which was a pretty big constriction. So that's why we pared down our improvement from the existing. With the pond, the total improvement cost is $1,159,600, with a net, well, it's over $300,000 less expensive than doing the repair, but still with the pond, which is about $167,000, it still exceeds the benefit. So without external funding, this pond can't be constructed. For option two, without the pond, we have a total cost of $1,009,900, which gives us about $30,100 of benefits.
Back to the cost. So we did submit the project to the SWCD, have been looking for grant funding to do the storage, have not been able to obtain any. We have a willing landowner, we have a willing system, but we don't have enough benefits. So our recommendation is to approve option two, basically approve the project with the pond, but construct it under option two. And if we get funding in the future, the pond could be constructed without having to come back through the entire improvement process. So our recommendation at this point is to approve the project, to construct it as option two, but approve the pond as an option that could be added if funding is added in the future. So there are $30,000 of net benefit. So if there were some funding that came forward, we could apply up to $30,000 of potential cost share for a pond if that funding came forward. We like to cover construction, and I'll go through this fairly quickly. We did cover this with landowners. If the project moves forward, we have to publicly bid it. We have a list of contractors, subcontractors. We require that the contractor have a reference list, have past experience doing these type of projects. They have to get a bid bond. We show a video to landowners at the landowner meeting, similar to this picture, showing that if this project moves forward, you will have construction on your property, but you do get paid damages for that construction. So we have put together a damage list, given that to the viewers, so they have applied that to the redetermination of benefits. We also have added something recently that every 2,600 feet, we require that the contractor clean up after themselves. That way they don't get too far away. We get everything completed, chisel plowed, graded. That's been a very good addition to our contracts. Some of the local contractors here were already doing that, but it just ensures that the project is done in steps and we don't have things that aren't done.
I would imagine the farmers are real happy about that, because that way they can use their land right away.
Correct. It came in very handy this spring when some work that was done in March and April, and the planters were right behind us. So
Good idea.
we talked about temporary and permanent damages. We did factor in that there could be some permanent damages for the pond. Again, we don't have the funding to do that at this point, but we have 100 feet wide area along the tile alignment for damages. There are some road authority costs. Road authorities are in charge of anything within their right-of-way. Blue Earth County, the Public Works, has $12,000 of costs for the boring under the county road. And then Garden City Township has $27,000 of costs for crossings of their roads. The tile will be abandoned. It is in very poor shape. It probably won't be connected in many places except for some of those small branches that are in place, but the main line is in very poor shape and will not be connected. So, we did review multi-purpose drainage management with landowners. We did look for outside funding. We talked about controlled drainage, alternative water quality inlets, which we are going to install at road crossings, storage ponds, wetlands, and we do have, like I said, we do have a willing landowner for the storage pond, but we don't have the funds to do it. We did get a DNR letter at the PER, and we did address that at the preliminary hearing. I can go over that if you'd like to go over those details. The project is cost effective for option 2, practical and feasible. So we would, and it is a public benefit. We would recommend approval of option 2 with the ability to come back and add the pond in the future. Questions for us?
All right. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
We will now hear from the viewers. Would you please introduce yourself for those listening on the conference call? Anyone on the phone would like to?
I am here. If you can, yep, I'm on the phone. This is Ron Rehnquist, one of the viewers.
All right.
This particular watershed, as to our process in this, we did a redetermination of benefits to the existing system, and that was adopted by the Drainage Authority in November 22nd of 2016. So in order to look at the improvement of this system, we considered a couple of things. And one is, as Mr. Brando said, is that the system in its entirety, as it exists today, will be abandoned. And therefore, it is our opinion that there is no separable maintenance, because the system will be replaced in its entirety, or the function of the system will be replaced in its entirety. That does reduce the total potential benefits, because in the existing system there are 47,400 feet of public tile, and once this new system is installed, there will only be 22,460 feet of public tile. So the reduction in benefit from the 2016 redetermination to the potential benefits today is only about $50,000 because of the $2 a foot that we benefit public tile. So to do the improvement, we started with the redetermined benefits as the identification of the land classifications and the potential benefits for the ditch system. The benefits in 2016 were reduced because of the limited capacities of the system as constructed in 1917. And so we had a benefit of $799,570 that was adopted by the board. With the increased capacity, considering the same acreage and the land use today, we have increased the hydraulic capacity to reflect that it will meet the engineer's recommended capacities. And with that adjustment, the benefits recommended for the system as improved, which is a comparison of no system with what will be there, is $1,040,912.73. And as I said, this is a determination of benefits. There is no redetermination of benefits because the system in its entirety is to be abandoned, and therefore there's not a separable part, and separable maintenance would not apply. All costs would be associated with the system as being proposed to be constructed. The damages that Mr. Randall talked about, we consider $500 per acre for the temporary damage. That does allow for the contractor to work within the given year of construction, whether it be during the cropping period or not, but 1 year of what we estimated at $250 cash rent. And then there is an additional period that we discount that about a 60% reduction in rent value the first year, 30% the second year, 10% the third year. So that on the fifth year, we feel that the land will be fully productive. And so we look at a 2-year cash rent discounted over a 4-year impact period because of the compaction and the disturbance of the soil during construction. So we have 51.61 acres of temporary damage for a value of $23,224.50. There are 567 benefited acres within this water strip zone. So that is the viewer's report.
All right. Thank you very much, Ron. We really appreciate that. We will now open this hearing for public comment. This hearing is being recorded, so please state your name and address. And as a courtesy to others wishing to comment, please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. We have received written comment from Mr. Gary Hudson. And Mr. Hudson, are you on the on-call line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Would you wish to comment first?
No, my intent was not to take up commissioners' time by offering those as verbal comments, but to simply request that my comments be entered into the written record.
I believe everybody from the board has read your comments. We really appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to comment on JD 17?
Yes, my name is Saber. I live in Lowell, Minnesota. I have a comment. How many times does this tile cross the Garden City Township Road? And also, I looked at the outlet of this tile last year when we had the 4-inch rain, and that outlet is 36 inches and it was running at full capacity And I don't know what a pond would do. I don't know if a pond would just hold back the water so it wouldn't come out faster. But it was coming out at full 36 inches. And I don't know, you couldn't run any more water through it, so I'll listen.
Go ahead.
This is Chuck Brandel again. I can answer the first question with the, it crosses the Garden City Township Road 3 times. The main line and then lateral C and lateral A all cross the Garden City Township Road. I agree with
You
the
said 3 times?
3 times, yes. Yep. And the existing system actually crosses it 5 times. So we're reducing that from 5 down to 3. Also, from a capacity standpoint, I agree with you, the 36-inch has run full. We did replace the outlet, and that outlet has an intake on it, so it accounts for, it's sized to handle significant amounts of overland flow that also come down into this area to try to drop that overland flow down into the ravine area. So it's sized to handle overland flow and tile flow. The proposed system is generally sized to handle all of the tile flow, understanding that there still will be overland flow. That's what that 0.4 half-inch drainage coefficient is sized for, that it reduces overland flow, but you still have some. But that outlet was oversized to try to drop the water down into the ravine. So agree that should be running full. That means it's working properly.
All right,
Okay, one other question.
go ahead.
One other question was the big blowouts you had on the other end of our property going into, I don't know who owns the other land, I call it the Kingmas Farm. They were putting in that black corrugated tile, I think it was 10 inches, I'm not sure. But it looked like they were pulling out the black corrugated tile and putting in exactly the same thing. Now, I don't take that high of blowing up, but I wasn't there all the time, so I really don't know what was going on there. Could you explain on that a little bit?
Is Ryan on the call? He was out there.
I'm here. You can hear me.
Yep.
I can hear it.
Wait. Okay. So yes, I was out there. I'll touch base on that quickly. Yes, there was a sinkhole. After exploring what the issue was with the sinkhole, it turned out that there was almost 200 feet of old concrete tile that was almost completely plugged shut with sediment. I'm assuming that was from the collapse where the sinkhole is, and that soil sucked its way down through the tile. So yes, the contractor was ordered to find a good clean tile that we're going to hook onto, and yes, we're putting dual wall plastic pipe in there. Common practice for all repairs. We don't do concrete anymore. So we're just waiting for the water to drain down, and things will get patched up and closed up as soon as possible.
So I was out there last week, but I didn't go walk over there, but it was blowing out and water was running into my property, and it was coming from the so-called lake from there. You're still working on that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So all the water that is in what you call the old Gene Camus farm, that is still boiling out, and we have to do a controlled drain of that because we can't just release all that water because of the head pressure behind that. So yes, some of the new tile is laid and it's bedded in. What we're using now is some larger rock to act as a filter. So it's slowly draining all that water from the Camus and the Pheasants Forever or whatever that Minnesota Valley Lands property is. As soon as the water level gets down to a safe spot, when we finish that repair, it will be patched up, covered up, and damages will be made to all applicable landowners.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right,
That's all I have.
thank you very much. I'm going to go back to Mr. Hudson. Are you still on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Would you like us to read your comments into today's meeting? We have your letter or your comments. Would you like us to just read that into the today's meeting?
It's not necessary unless it's required. As I indicated, I was just anticipating it being entered into the written record due to its length.
All right. Then we won't. But thank you very much. It will be entered into the written record. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there?
Could I speak once more?
You can.
This is Russ Haber, and I was just thinking, this project is very expensive for the amount of drain field that it takes care of. It's about 600 acres, and that's over $1 million. And to me, that isn't very cost effective to have to pay over $1 million to drain a little over 500 acres. And I understand it's probably feed up and all that sort of stuff, but it just seems like an awful lot of money just to take care of that. But hopefully it would take care of it, but there's a lot of times when we get rain, it doesn't seem to take care of it no matter what. So I don't know what's going to happen.
All right. Thank you for your comments, sir. Is there anyone else online that would wish to speak to JD 17? One more time, is there anyone else online that would wish to speak to JD 17?
One other little comment about the cut. Is this type of scenario of doing it over the phone is not effective? Is there anybody actually calling in and listening, or are they talking, or they just don't bother to call in?
This is Jesse Anderson. I'm the secretary for the board. It appears as though we have about 15 individuals on the call listening to the meeting, but there are other items on the agenda to be discussed today.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
We're also being live streamed, so people could be watching it on TV.
That's correct. We are being live streamed, so a lot of people watch this on YouTube. So,
They can watch it, but they never comment, right? Is that the way it usually goes?
well, it's up to a person's personal view whether they want to comment or not.
Because, a lot of people, they talk on the side, but they never bother to talk publicly, so.
Isn't that the way it
That's
is?
the way it works.
Yeah, we hear that all the time.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for commenting, though. We really appreciate it. We need the comments to do the right thing, okay?
You bet.
All right. If there are no additional comments from the public, we will bring the issue to the board for further action. Is there a resolution for your consideration on page 210 of the board packet?
Purvis moves approval of INS's recommendation of approving both projects, one with the pond if additional funding should become available. Otherwise, we'll use the first project.
Brunder will second.
We got a motion and we have a second. Any discussion from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Brunder. Chuck, with the benefits and repair or the improvement getting so close together, do you see any major concerns out there and overruns or other issues? We heard comments earlier about these projects getting expensive, and they are, but we need the drainage. And I know it's a hard question to answer, but we've been here, done this. Are we using the right pipe, and are we doing this the right way so we don't run into another large expense?
Yeah, if I could, to repair the system, so if we don't do anything, publicly, there's $1.5 million of public tile out there. So we're doing, $500,000 less,
Right,
and replacing that. So we're trying, the redetermination was done before the improvement petition came forward. So we knew that we were limited on what we could do. So we're trying to get an outlet to every property so that every property has an outlet and replace the main. So we're essentially minimizing the project.
Overruns.
Yes.
Okay.
We also have a 10% contingency built in, and Our bids or our numbers are based on the past year's bids. This year, we have seen bids come in. We were hoping that we'd see a reduction with what's going on, but they're coming in 1% to 2% under our estimates. So they're still coming in under our estimate, but we have 10% built in. So,
Thank you, Chuck.
yep.
Will Purvis would like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
I've heard from several of the landowners on this project, and I would agree it's a very expensive project. And it's hard for some of the smaller farms there. But in the same token, we're kind of between a rock and a hard spot here. The system is in very poor shape. I'd also like to comment that I've been the county's representative on the One Watershed, One Water plan. And they are moving forward with that and are looking for projects that would improve the water quality on the Watonwan River. And this system empties into the Watonwan River. So with any hope, there might be some additional funding, especially for the ponding, as that plan moves forward.
Any other comments? All right. Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. All right. I believe that's the end of the public hearing for JD 17. Our next,
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.
thank you very much, Chuck.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay. We're going to start our next discussion is going to be on County Ditch 92. And good morning
Thanks,
and
Bruce.
welcome to County Ditch 92 public hearing. And at this time, I would ask the commissioners to please introduce themselves. You go ahead.
My name's Colleen Landcamer. I represent the first district.
Kip,
Commissioner Brunder, District 5.
Will,
Commissioner Purvis, District 4.
Commissioner People, District 3.
and I'm Commissioner Van Stoomberg. I represent District Number 2. We will now have the Blue Earth County Drainage Management Staff member Ryan Hineker read the judicial documents. Ryan, are you online?
Yep, good morning. This is Ryan Henniker, part of the Blue Earth County Drainage Management staff. I'll read a couple jurisdictional document items for the CD92 hearing. Hearing notices were mailed out and sent on May 20th of this year. Hearing notices were also posted outside of the Board of Commissioner room and the Historic Courthouse. And also a landowner meeting was held for landowners on July 11th for this CD92 potential petition.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'd like to state for the record that Mr. John Klob with Rankin Nolan is on the phone should there be any questions for an attorney. Okay. Mr. Jeff, how do you pronounce your last name?
I believe it's Bregelman.
Bragelman?
Frankel, yes.
Bragelman, the petitioner's attorney, will now have an opportunity to speak. Mr. Bragelman, please state your name and address for the record. I have one of those long last names too, Jeff, so I always want to make sure I get it correct when I pronounce it.
Fair enough. I bet like me, you end up having to spell it 3 or 4 times a day.
Yeah, everybody wonders how we learned how to spell it when we grew up.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeff Bragelman. I am a lawyer with the Gibson and Hunter Law Firm over at New Ulm, Minnesota. And I represent the petitioners on this case. The petitioner is ABC Holdings LLP. That's a partnership that includes Andy Walter, I is that I don't think today's proceedings, at least from a legal perspective, are about the design of the wetland, whether people like these projects or not, the credits that may be generated, that sort of thing. Instead, this is a hearing before a drainage authority under the drainage statute. So those are the concerns or the issues that I really want to focus on today with our presentation. There are two statutes that are involved here, because if this project is approved and is constructed, basically a wetland will be established, and to do that, certain parts of the existing public drainage system will be changed. And the engineers will explain the details of that to them. But it's that aspect of the proposed project, in part, that requires us to come to you as the drainage authority to seek your approval for this project. Another statute that we're operating under governs the impoundment or rerouting of drainage system waters. And I think that could be implicated as well by this request, so the petition is brought under that statute as well. And I think when we get right down to it, in terms of the issues that are pertinent under the drainage statute, it's really a pretty narrow question or inquiry. Essentially, the statute that we're operating under says that if my client's proposed project will be of either a public or a private benefit, and as long as it does not impair the utility of the drainage system, it does not deprive the landowners of the benefit of the drainage system, then I think the statute actually requires that the project be approved. And I think, again, I'll let the engineers comment on this, but I think it's going to be obvious even from your own appointed engineers report that there is both a public and a private benefit that will be derived from the project, that the changes in the system are not going to impair the utility of the drainage system, will not, affect or decrease the capacity of the drainage system, and therefore will not, adversely affect and will not deprive the landowners on the system from the benefits that they currently get from that system. So based on that, I think that the conclusion of the testimony, I'm hoping you'll agree that those criteria are met and the project should be approved. The only issue I'd like to raise is this. In the engineer's report that I've seen and in the proposed order that I've seen, there are some pretty extensive mechanisms to allow the drainage authority to assure itself that this project will be completed as it's been designed and as you will hopefully approve. For example, I understand we will have a post-construction acceptance hearing where you will have an opportunity to be satisfied that things were done as per design. The plan also calls for televising the lines that will be installed. It, of course, allows the drainage authority and its representatives access during construction to look at the project. It provides that your appointed engineer would have to approve any proposed changes to the plan. And as I said, it's planned to have this post-construction hearing. The one thing I saw in the engineer's report, though, that I have a little concern about is that he recommended, I think, what he called a full-time inspection during construction. And I would just respectfully suggest and request that is not necessary. We have some concern that it will just add additional cost to the project that we really don't think are warranted. You have a licensed engineer who designed the project, another licensed engineer who has reviewed it, and you have all of these mechanisms built in already to be assured that it will be constructed as approved and as designed. I would request that that you not require that ISG be on site each day during inspection. The other safeguards we have absolutely no problem with, and we think they're appropriate. The last point I would make is that, as I understand it, there's no decision to be made today about whether a change in like the allocation of future repair costs, maintenance costs, whether that should be made or not. That's an issue that will be looked at after the project is done and when we have the acceptance hearing. I and my clients believe that this is actually going to produce benefits, in the sense that it will reduce future maintenance expenses. But we understand and we agree that that's an issue that will be taken up after the project is completed when we come back for the acceptance hearing. So in a nutshell, I guess I'm here to, certainly I'll stay on the line to answer any questions that people may have, but I just wanted to outline at the outset here kind of what the parameters are and what the specific legal issues are that we should be looking at under the statute. It will not impair the utility of the system, and it will provide both a public and a private benefit. So on that point, specifically under the statute, I would urge approval of the petition. That's all I have at this point. As I said, I'll stay on the line and be available for follow-up questions if there are any. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. We will now have Mark Oringer from ISG discuss the results of the preliminary service report for this proposed impoundment. And please note, we also have Dan and Josh from Bolton and Mink, the petitioners and engineers, on the phone should you have questions for them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, as well as the rest of the board. My name is Mark Orger. I'm a civil engineer with ISG. I'm just gonna wait for this to get up here, and there we go. I think that was a great recap by Jeff Bregelman on the project. So he covered quite a bit of what I was going to cover as far as the impoundment and rerouting and abandonment procedures go. But I'm here today to represent the Drainage Authority on County Dish 92 for the impacts that this wetland may or may not have on the system. Just to start out with, there's quite a bit to cover, and I'm going to try to summarize it the best I can in the interest of time. I think, like I said, Mr. Bregelman really covered the majority of it from the legal standpoint, so I'm going to highlight kind of just the engineering designs and review that ISG had on the project. First of all, just to get the location and get everybody kind of familiar with where we're at, I am going to reference the maps that I present on the screen here today if you want to follow along. We are in Meadow Township sections 20, 21, 28, and 29 primarily. The watershed itself is about a 1,400 acre watershed as shown on this red line on the screen. The open ditch itself of County Ditch 92 runs from east to west as it enters and outlets into the Cobb River, and today we're focusing on branch 1. It's the branch 1 public tile that extends from the Walzer property across the Coles property and into the Jermel property. I do want to note before I get in kind of some of the roles and what's partaken in this project for the last few months. We have been working with Bolton and Mink on the review of the design to make sure that it does follow all the legal procedures, making sure the capacities are correct for the drainage system, and trying to get this project in a spot where it can be ready to go and easily approvable by this board as far as attached statute does go. We also had a landowner meeting where I've addressed several questions and comments from interested parties, and I think that was pretty successful. We had about a 2-hour-long discussion going through the project, and I've had a couple other phone calls with it too. Just kind of at a high level, the way that this particular proceedings worked, the cooperative of the Walzers for this wetland bank, they have a petition to the Drainage Authority to review. They're using Bolton and Mink as their design engineer for the wetland itself, going through the permitting and that process, and ISG is reviewing this on the Drainage Authority's behalf, and so that's why I'm here today. So specifically looking at the project itself, again, I'm not going to talk about the specific engineering on the project, just looking more at the ditch system. But the map that I have shown here really highlights what the overall concept of the project is. First of all, looking at the impoundment, and this process is done in many different ways. A lot of it is for wetland restorations. It's also done for Ducks Unlimited, wildlife management areas, bowels of rim easements. So it is pretty common, especially today as we're putting more and more wetlands onto the landscape. This specific project on the Walzer property is shown with this blue cross-hatched area on the map. And as you can see, it is following the contours of the land. It's curved, it's not square like a pond or another impoundment may be. To get this thing in a spot where it can be restored back to where it once was, there will be some berms installed, and those are shown in brown. Those are shown on the west side of the property, just off of County Road 169. There's also a berm on the east side of the property to prevent backwater from going onto the neighboring HODAP property. So that would be the impoundment part of the statute. The abandonment would be abandoning portions of the main line that run right through the middle of the wetland, and then portions of branch 1 that once dumped into the open ditch of County Ditch 92. The reroute portions of this include rerouting the branch 1 tile, which is shown in the orange, and then rerouting the open ditch, which is shown in the red, kind of following the contours of the land as well, to keep the overall depth of that ditch at a minimum. So that's a high-level review of it, and I have provided maybe 2 or 3 different memos back to the county drainage staff, and hopefully that made its way up to the board as well. But I do have an updated one that I worked on yesterday with the finals from Bolton and Mink, and I'm going to go through that memo here rather quickly. Obviously, at the end, I can answer any questions that may come up. But again, just looking at the review from the Drainage Authority's perspective here. First of all, we're going to look at the open ditch, and that is, again, the reroute is shown in red on the screen here. The legal conditions of the branch, or excuse me, the mainline open ditch here is a 4-foot bottom at a 0.02% slope with a 1.5 to 1 side slope ratio. The proposed project includes that same 4-foot bottom with a 0.02% slope. However, we are recommending, and it has been included, to have a 2 to 1 side slope instead for some more stability. Given the reroutes, kind of the curvature and the sinuosity of this ditch as it's not straight, we just want to make sure we have stable side slopes, especially as it's going to be in a deeper landscape here. It'll have a lot deeper depth to it, and we want to have stable side slopes, so that has been included in the plans as recommended. Next, I'll talk about the branch 1 tile reroute. Currently, that is a 14-inch tile at a 0.2% grade that runs into the open ditch. The legal capacity of that tile right now is a 0.41 drainage coefficient, and I know this board's familiar with it, but for those on the line, the drainage coefficient does recommend, or it does reference the depth of water over 24 hours that can drain. Today's standards recommended is a 1/2 inch drainage coefficient for a tile, and so right now under the legal conditions it's at a 0.41. However, being that that's a 14-inch tile, we can go in and repair that with a 15-inch, the next available size, so that does gain a little capacity. The proposed branch 1 reroute is an 18-inch tile at a 0.06% grade, which results in a 0.44% or 0.44 inch per day drainage coefficient, which is legally acceptable as part of this reroute and abandonments. And also just to note, it's very close to that 1/2 inch, so under this proposal, the improvement statute's not really necessary because that capacity is basically right at that 1/2 inch drainage coefficient. The open ditch itself has a 1 inch per day drainage coefficient. One thing to note, at the very end of this branch 1 tile outlet, I think it's for about 150 feet, we did recommend upsizing that to a 24-inch tile, and the reason being is there are private tiles from the HODAP property that right now dump into the open ditch, and so they had that 1 inch per day drainage coefficient as it sits today, and by putting that into an 18-inch tile, that would restrict the capacity. So by upsizing that last 150 feet or so to a 24-inch tile does get that 1 inch per day drainage coefficient, which is the same as what the HODAPs had prior to this project. A couple other things on the branch 1 tile. We do recommend not having any 90-degree bends. That does pose kind of a restriction in capacity. And given the kind of sharp turns that this tile reroute will have, we did recommend having just some high-level guidelines for the Bolton and Mink engineers, having 45-degree bends at the maximum and having about 40 feet at the minimum of a distance in between, so that we get a nice curvature versus hitting some sharp bends and whatnot. Obviously, that'll probably be adjusted in the field once we find where all the existing tiles are at, but those are just some general guidelines that we had for them, and that'll be field adjusted as necessary. Other things to go through, we do have shown on the plans that there are a couple drop intakes. One of them is kind of on the HODAP walls or property line right in the middle of the reroute, and then another one is shown on the Colos walls or property line. And really those are there for inspection and at places for other tiling to be added into it. As far as televising goes, we just don't have a long enough, nor is there really a camera long enough to go 2,500 feet, so you need to have different inspection ports to drop that camera in for televising. So those are good to have on there. Given the project and some of the hydrology, I don't think that those are necessarily needed for subsurface drainage. or even taking any of that surface water. So I recommend either having those remain 2 to 3 feet above the ground after televising, or cut them down and bury them below so that they don't take any surface water, as the surface water will go directly into the proposed wetland. Another note on the tile installation itself, there are several different methods that were shown on the plans. A lot of it could be for sanitary sewer or other storm sewer. There was some notes on how to install the agricultural tile, and those are all acceptable. We do recommend the spoon method with sand on top of it. However, there's a couple spots on that reroute that get deep. It's over 15 feet, so we do recommend having rock on top of that in those areas, and that is also included on the plans. On the north part of the open ditch, and I'll jump back to the map here, there are several areas where surface water comes into the open ditch, and instead of having straight pipe culverts taking that surface water from the berm into the open ditch, we did recommend having drop intake side inlet structures, which is very common practice for Blue Earth County, where you have like a trash grate or a Hickenbottom, takes the water vertically into the riser, and then takes it at a 90 degrees into the open ditch. That just prevents some of the future erosion, and it has less long-term maintenance on it. Those have also been included in the plans. One more note on the open ditch itself. We did recommend some seeding specs on here that have been included into the plans. Generally, when you have new ditch construction like this, the side slopes can be susceptible to erosion, especially during construction. So we do have a couple different notes on there to have either erosion control blanket, hydromulching, other methods like that, maybe with a bonded fiber matrix as well, and having rapid stabilization of that vegetation, because that's pretty key in having stable ditch banks, especially on a new ditch construction like this. We do recommend on the ditch banks, upon final leveling, having seeding within 2 to 3 days, and then the buffers, once those are leveled and the spoils are leveled off, within 7 days. So that's a recommendation that we have. As far as the seed mixtures and the seeding rates and applications, those are referencing MnDOT standards. Again, that's another standard that is acceptable for this type of project. There was a note about how much inspection coverage and review to be on site during this project. I don't anticipate full-time inspection being necessary for this project. I do recommend some inspection. Hopefully it's just, maybe a half day or so getting the contractor started, going through some of the specs, parameters, what we're looking for, and then we can stop in as necessary to field any questions and maybe stop in every other day or so. We do want to limit our time as well on this project too from the construction, but ISG will be available for any potential questions that may come up during construction. So I do agree with Mr. Bregelman. I don't think that full-time inspection is necessary on here, but just know that ISG is ready to be there and maybe help with a few upfront questions. The last comment that I have is on kind of some of the reroute and the lengths of the infrastructure here. This is a unique property. A lot of wetlands and impoundments that you see really put your impoundment at the bottom of the basin, you reroute and daylight tiles into it. In this case, just given the topography and how flat it is, it does require rerouting the tiles and open ditch around the basin, so that does add some length into the open ditch. I don't think that the assessments or maintenance costs are really part of today's discussion, but just note that there will be longer infrastructure. However, keep in mind that with this impoundment, there will be less water utilized in those open ditches and the tile. So that's something to consider too. Generally speaking, with this large of an impoundment, you're going to have less flow, less peak flow rates, and overall a better flow capacity and hydraulics going through that public infrastructure. And I think with that, like I said, there's been a lot of behind the scenes work on this. We've been working with Blue Earth County, we've been working with Bolton and Mink and some of the landowners too. So I do recommend approval of this from the Drainage Authority's perspective. It was mentioned to have some televising and some on-site inspection as necessary as the project moves forward. But from what we see, definitely a public benefit, private benefit as well. And based on the designs that we have in the hydraulics, we do not see any upstream negative impacts on the surrounding properties. So again, just would recommend approval for this project. At this time, I can certainly address any questions from the board. I know I kind of breezed through this pretty quickly, but in the interest of time, and again, what Mr. Bregelman had covered really kind of highlighted quite a bit of what I was going to go through anyways. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Mark? All right. Dan and Josh from Bolton and Mink, do you have anything to add to this? Doesn't sound like it.
Yes, Dan O'Neill with Bolton and Mink, senior natural resource specialist. We've been, like as Mark said, we've been working pretty closely with the county
on getting this design right and taking into consideration some of the comments from the public. And I think we've hit on all of them. And it's been a nice project working with all these people.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, we will now open the hearing to public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. We received a letter from Mr. Willis Ward. And Mr. Ward, are you on the phone? I don't hear anything. Jesse, could you read Mr. Willis Ward's letter for the record?
Sure, Mr. Chair. The letter is dated June 5th, 2020, and is addressed to the Blue Earth County Property and Environmental Resources Department. I am writing in regard to the County Ditch 92 hearing being held June 11th, 2020. I'm a concerned property owner with land in section 29 and 19, part of the Ditch 92 system. This was formerly a private ditch system west of County Road 169. At the request of property owners east of County Road 169, the ditch system was enlarged and made deeper to accommodate them by being declared County Ditch 92 at a much greater cost and assessments to property owners in the 1970s. My first concern is what happens to the ditch assessments on the Walser parcel of land. This parcel of land is added a big cost to the total cost of the ditch, as it was one of the biggest benefactors in the new ditch 92. I do not think it would be fair to other landowners in the system that Walser's share of assessment should be lowered. My second concern is what happens to the water table level of the land of property owners adjoining in Meadow Township, section 20 to 29, on the west side of County Highway 169. I think it will no doubt be rising with more water being stored on the Walser property. I have been in contact with Craig Austenson about these concerns in July of 2019 and on the phone for some time on March 20th, 2020. Sincerely, Willis Ward.
All right. Is there anyone else on the phone that would wish to comment on County Ditch 92?
Mr. Chair, this is Ryan with Blue Earth County Drainage.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to address some of the concerns with Mr. Ward's submittal, any of those discussions with the benefits and future expenses like Mr. Bragelman and Mr. Orger already covered, we would like to defer any of that until the acceptance hearing, until some of those things are agreed. There's a lot of things that need to be negotiated and figured out for benefits and stuff moving forward. So at this time, we're not going to address those issues. But maybe I'll defer to one of the engineers for the water table concern, but I do not believe that a water table issue should be too worried about. The Bolton Make crew has a very good design with a clay liner between ISG and Bolton Make. There's a lot of very smart people that have worked on this project and covered almost all angles, but I will let Mark or Dan, from the engineer's perspective, also give their comments if they'd like. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Is there anyone else on the call that would like to make a public comment? And one last time, is there anyone else on the call that would like to comment to County Ditch 92? If not, I will close the public comments portion of the hearing and bring this matter back to the board.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Brunder here. Mark, could you just elaborate a little bit on the water table question that Ryan started to answer, or Dan, whichever would like to touch that?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Again, Mark Orger with ISG here. I can comment a little bit, and then perhaps Dan can actually add in a little bit too on the design. Keep in mind that we're reviewing this as far as the drainage authority's perspective and the public infrastructure. So there may be some increases in water tables on the walls or property. However, when you look at the topography and the methods being put in place on the design with the clay berms, as Ryan had mentioned, and the rerouting the tile all the way around it, still providing a capacity for that. And it would actually have less impacts from this area because historically this basin has flooded, utilized the ditch infrastructure a lot more. And now, if you will, you have the branch one tile and then the rerouted open ditch kind of having its own conduit free of that water going around. As far as water table backing up on neighboring properties, I don't see that that would have a significant impact on it. I think there are some flowage agreements in place on some of the high level events for the surface water perhaps, but from the Drainage Authority's perspective, I do believe that it would be insignificant given that there's going to be infrastructure the same place that it is now, it'll be at the same elevation it is now, and that it has its own conduit going all the way around the wetland too. And if Dan from Bolton Lake wants to add any on that, certainly that would be a good time for that.
Thank you, Mark.
Dan, you have anything?
Well, I'm gonna leave that to Josh here, he's the engineer of the project, see if he has any comments on that.
Yeah, this is Josh here with Bolton Lake. Mark summed it up pretty well. The only thing I would add is the neighboring property itself, even sits 6 to 8 feet above what we're proposing for a water level in the wetland. So I mean, I agree with Mark. I would expect any impact to the water table on that property to be relatively minimal.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair, one other comment.
You bet.
Brunder, also again, as in regards to the on-site inspections, I certainly don't have a problem with it not being full-time, but in the interest of the ditch, I certainly would support ISG being out there and checking on projects and making sure that, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the 45s and the 90s, and we have good construction crews in Blue Earth County, so I'm sure it'll get built right, but I certainly would not support taking that out altogether. I think it needs to just stay in there, and I would support leaving it in there to a certain degree of time. I'm not sure how we outline that, but it has to stay in there as far as I'm concerned.
All right.
If there's no other questions, Mr. Chair, Brunder would move the petition to impound, reroute, divert, and partially abandon the drainage system waters on County Ditch 92.
Purvis seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any
Mr. Chair, this is John Cole.
Go ahead, John.
I know we have a draft of findings. I believe they're in your board packet. I'm not sure which page they might start on. But it might be beneficial because we only do have the one comment of Mr. Ward that's been read into the record, and we have responses to his two concerns. First being the future assessment issue on this affected parcel, and then the second being the adjacent water table. My suggestion is that we go ahead and use those findings and get the board's authorization to add those comments and responses to the written document. As part of that too, and I'll pause for a moment so you can get to it or confirm to me that you're at the draft order in your packet.
It's page 216 and 217, I believe, for board members.
All right.
Just a couple of items. And Mr. Bregelman referenced the proper statutes, and I think he went and did a great job of summarizing what your decision standards are. He did talk about this requirement of the on-site inspection, and that is reflected initially in paragraph 16 of the findings, which is the recommendation of the engineer to have an on-site inspection, and it's further dealt with in the order itself at paragraph 6 of the order. And it doesn't require full-time on-site. It just says that the Drainage Authority or its representative will be granted access to the construction site to verify compliance. So I think that's very consistent with Commissioner Brender's suggestion and desire to at least keep that option open. And paragraph 6 is written in such a way where it doesn't foreclose full-time inspection on behalf of the county, but it really suggests that when and if necessary, the Drainage Authority will have access to verify certain parts of the construction. We also require in the order that the petitioners provide well to make sure, in paragraph 2, to make sure that we have all of that. So we think we've addressed all of those issues. I do note that paragraph 7 of the draft order needs to be updated to reflect today's date and not the June 9th date. So we can make that, if that's acceptable to the party moving and seconding. And then finally, we should really look at paragraphs 19, 20, and 21 and make sure that the board's very clear on that. I believe by making this motion, the commissioners and seconding the commissioners making the action are suggesting that the project will be of public or private benefit in paragraph 19, that the project will not impair the utility and drainage system in paragraph 20, and that the project will not deprive affected landowners of the drainage system's benefit. And as long as we can confirm those three things as part of this motion, then I would just ask if the friendly amendment to the motion could be made that we adopt the findings with the modifications as recommended, and that way we can finalize a written document to affect the action you're taking today.
Commissioner Brunder here, and I would certainly support that language that Mr. Kolb would like to add. And thank you for pointing out the clarifications on 19, 20, and 21.
Will? Well, you agree with that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. It really, really helps having that clarified. Any other discussion? Any other discussion between the board? Jesse, could you call the roll?
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. All right. This concludes the County Ditch 92 public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody on the phone.
Thank you, everybody
Marty,
on the
commissioners.
phone. Really appreciate all the comments during this COVID time of public hearings.
We take a short break, Mr. Chair.
We can take a short break. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
We will take a 10-minute break. It looks like we're ready to go here again. Thank you very much. He gave me the thumbs up, so I'm taking that as is okay. We're going to go into Human Services with Mr. Phil Clausen.
Morning, Phil.
Yeah, good morning, Phil.
Morning, Phil.
Everybody. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for hearing me today. I have a few action items and then some discussion items as well. I think most of it is things that you have been familiar with in the past. The action items under disability services, there's actually two, and then that last one is a separate issue. The first one is a list of amendments, and you might recall I brought these contracts to board in the not so distant past. And what we're really trying to do is standardize the rate. They're not huge differences between the providers. Everybody gets something. A few of them it's a few pennies, and then other people it's a little more significant. But there really is no rhyme to our reason for having different reimbursement rates. And so we just realized that after many years, and the windows presented itself, and it looks like it's close enough that my recommendation is that we would standardize the rate. Obviously, the SILS program, the heart of it is to help consumers stay in their home. The term of the contracts that are in place are July 20th of this year through June 30th of next year. The overall budget for SILS is $128,498, and then we currently serve 24 consumers. And the next item actually goes right with this, where there's a new provider, and we've had a long-standing practice of if there's a viable provider in the community that we offer, obviously, similar contracts and abilities to provide the service to our constituents for SILS, and increasing the option of choice. The content of the SILS contract for this the Eon group is the same as above, and the term is also the same with the standardized rate. And then, Mr. Chair, just the final action item is just to talk about urgent emergent transportation under COVID. We're requesting the board's approval for an allowance to look at urgent emergent transportation services for residents who have no resources to pay for rides when they're active in symptoms, COVID-like symptoms. Many transportation providers will not provide this service if a client is providing that symptomology. We attempt to and will attempt to ask if family members are comfortable transporting or if there's any other means of transporting safely. But if not, there is at least one provider in town that would do this at a high rate. The rate that we were quoted, we haven't used this yet, was $160 per transport. So it's pretty expensive. But I think we do all we could to avoid using that. It's just nice to have in the tool belt if we're really stuck. And this came about because we were stuck, and then I believe a family member came through and we offered to pay for gas in those circumstances. So often we're able to work it out. But this action item would just be looking for the board's support on a case-by-case basis to allow county funds to be used for that if absolutely necessary. Those are my action items.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
do we pass these all at once?
pass them all at once, yep.
As figured, yeah, I'll move that, and I appreciate the report. I'll move all. People move
In a
some.
second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Any discussion? Are a lot of these passed through, or is this coming straight from the county budget? Or how's?
Yeah, there's a percentage for the SILS work that we pay and the percentage that they pay. So our budget is based on that percentage split out from the state to us. I think it's a 70-30 split, Mr. Chair. And so we pay our portion of that for these 25 individuals. It's not a huge group of people, but it's important that we try to create that bridge.
Right. And I really appreciate the transportation issue under, I mean, yeah, it's pretty spendy if you have to use it, but if you have to, it's nice to have that there.
That's what it is, Mr. Commissioner. It's absolutely the safety net kind of philosophy, applied directly through an option in our tool belt with the local provider who would stand ready to do this if we needed it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. All right, now for your informational and discussion items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. There's two items that I want to bring to your attention. The first is SHIP update. And obviously, SHIP has been affected in its operations, as you can imagine, very significantly. We are trying to resume some of those direct services and re-engage our partners in the community is the first bullet. The second bullet is that public health has identified these opportunities whenever we have the SHIP opportunities for a press release. And this is something I know that we've talked about and the board's been involved with too, but just to make sure that the community is aware of the work we're doing. So we have that infrastructure in place when before we did not do such a great job of always communicating that to the public. And the third bullet is just that the SHIP funds could be used, or we could have reallocated those to COVID, which we did. So both our SHIP staff have been deeply involved in the response. They've been very valuable in their network that they know of people in the community. And then, specific example might be the food resources that they're aware of. And so when we have the duty to provide essential services and bring food to people, they were helpful in some knowledge about how to do that efficiently and well. Obviously we're hoping we can get back up and running with some of our more traditional SHIP duties. The second one, I'm sure you're all familiar with, but one of the big things in the special session was the EMC Blue Ribbon Committee. And the attachment, when I even put this together last week, this was all pending. And so we do know that some of it's changed slightly, but I think it is one of the, I guess I'm going to say, few successes that we have right now that got through the filter. And so we were very pleased by that. And I know a lot of work has been done from our board and also our staff and MAXA and AMC to get this to happen. The gist of it is in the second paragraph in the first page is it talks about video and processing enrollment remotely. That's really the great gain, is that we're using telehealth and we're able to do some of our work remotely rather than face-to-face, which is in statute. But the ask from AMC was to ramp down these over a 60-day period and deliver services in a way that still promotes safety of staff and the recipients. At the end of that page, it talks about just the evaluation process and identifying these waivers and modifications from a list of 60. So I know a lot of work went into triaging those and deciding which ones are we going to push. And most all of them went forward in one form or another. Broken into 3 categories in the rest of the document: technology and support of essential practices, maintaining housing and economic support, and systemic savings and efficiencies is the 3rd category. In the 1st category, just to highlight just a couple things in each, this was where our strong integration of the virtual visits came to play. You'll see the first 2 bullets, mental health, substance use, and then targeted case management, are obviously core to our practice. They all are very important. The 3rd one, the foster care, actually did not go forward, so that one did not get passed just because of the criticalness of some of the face-to-face pieces that are going on in that situation. In the next category, maintaining access to housing and economic support, the first bullet, extending the number of days individuals are allowed to be absent. So if somebody has to go in for treatment for COVID, that they're not going to lose their housing. That's really the goal of this. And that got extended to December of 2020. So there was some amendment to that. That last paragraph talks about the application for MFIP for our resources in financial assistance, and those that whole section did not pass, and so there was just concern about making sure again that there's face-to-face contact, that the quality stays high. If there was, my understanding was if there was controversy, that they tended to not pass them forward or amend them significantly, and there weren't many that got changed. In the final category, those 3 bullets, first 3 bullets, is about the providers, so some flexibility and grace given to the providers regarding licensing in substance abuse. The 2nd bullet is mental health centers, and the 3rd bullet is how we do administrative reviews, if there's any delays in discharge from state hospitals. This is a big issue. A lot of times there's no bed, or the staff at the state hospital does not feel like the person's got a great discharge plan. And if we're hung up because of COVID, we're saying that the county doesn't pay the freight on that. So that's a big one. And then the next bullet actually did not pass again. That had to do with child protection. And just saying, if in some cases, if a law enforcement officer would go out, or if somebody goes to the hospital and a professional is looking at the child and the child goes to a relative or a safe place, that we were looking for some grace to not have to do our 24-hour response to child protection, but that didn't pass just based on concern for quality. And I think that's just fine. And then the very final item also didn't pass, which was that people could have a 90-day supply of their prescriptions. As you can imagine, the pharmacy was not thrilled with that plan, and so that did not pass. But I just wanted to give the board a chance to look at those things. I'm sure you've seen them in a lot of different formats, and obviously they came right through AMC. So we appreciate that work and effort and success.
Well, we appreciate your work on this. We are privileged to have Commissioner Landcamer on that Blue Ribbon Committee.
Right.
One of 19 across the state of Minnesota. So that's
15, but who's counting?
15, I'm sorry. But that's really been beneficial to us because we get first knowledge, and Commissioner Landcamer has helped us out a lot on that.
Thanks.
So thanks for your time on that.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for your work. I know we didn't get everything we wanted,
Right.
but we did get something.
Right.
Obviously, there's more things that have to get taken care of. that the legislature has to take care of, but we'll take what we get. This time of COVID, you never know what's going to come up next week.
That's right. That's right.
But thank you so much. Anybody else have any questions for?
I have a couple comments. The waiver piece, Angie Youngerbird actually was the lead on that for Maxa and AMC, and Angie testified a couple times, both in the House and the Senate. She did yeoman's work on this, and I just think we need to recognize how fortunate we are to have Phil and Angie running our human services, because they are looked to across the state for knowledge and figuring out how to work this through. We went with 15 waivers originally because we knew we couldn't do more than that with the legislature. And we got 10, DHS put 4 in, or not, HHS, Human Services put 4 in, the state. The interesting thing about the pharmacy one, it would have saved the state $1.8 million in 4 months, but the legislature chose not to do that. That's a pretty big chunk of money in 4 months. So just it's been a wonderful experience, just kind of looking at what other people are doing and how we work together. So it's been something that we as a board, I think, should be really proud of the people we have working with us. There have been other people from Blue Earth County who have been presenting to the Blue Ribbon Commission, just because they're extremely knowledgeable and can talk about the different aspects of the jobs that counties do. So just wanted to mention that.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioner Landcamer, thank you for that. I forgot to mention too that some of these, there is a whole plan. It was passed with language that would say that some of these of the list would continue into next year, June of next year. The reason why we're not fully claiming that is that I think the feds, if I'm right, have some say to that too. So to me, it's not a done deal, even though I think in the AMC brief it was kind of written that way. I think there's still some question of that, how that'll track out, but I wondered if you had any other thoughts on that.
And we are concerned about that, but Senator Tina Smith has decided to take this on and try to push through some of these waivers. So we've got a partner from Minnesota really pushing that at the federal level.
Right. And Mr. Chair, one more thing, if I could, I forgot to mention that Yellow Line did, after 3 years, finally pass with being part of the MA service set. And so this is a little bit of a foot in the door approach. It's not a huge amount of money, but what we've been wanting to do, working with the department, to get this set up so that we could have revenue, so that we and others could start to bill for some of those services directly. We have been sustainable off of our savings and detox and state hospital, but to have a revenue source really kind of legitimizes it. And we've just been victim, much like you were saying, Mr. Chair, of some of the circumstances of the past sessions. We had bipartisan support. We went and testified multiple times. People were like clapping for us, but we couldn't get it across the finish line. And so it is a kind of an internal and moral victory. I hope the ripples will continue to, right now in these times, I think the Yellow Line and that whole diversion philosophy is going to be a big deal coming forward. So.
To bring up Yellow Line, it's interesting to note that Blue Earth County's Yellow Line was brought up by some state legislators from the metro area, saying that this is what people are talking about when they talk about defunding law enforcement. They don't mean eliminating law enforcement. They mean finding other areas to help people when they're in need instead of throwing them in jail. Blue Earth County has been noted by representatives across the state saying we are doing that work. And so kudos to you, kudos to the Sheriff's Department, the Mankato Police Department. I think we're on the forefront of what needs to be done across the state of Minnesota, probably in the metro area. And they need to come back and talk to you and Angie and say, how do you do this? So thank you very much for the work you've done on that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm pretty close to this whole topic, but like that frame up that you just said helps me because I sometimes you get lost in the waves of the rhetoric. And so to reframe that and say defunding might be allocating differently, might be a different feeling altogether because I certainly have a lot of respect for law enforcement.
Anybody else?
Well, I appreciate the work of Clean and Angie, and I know Angie's kind of, well, they're both our stars, but Angie I know is from legislators, was impressed, and Phil for your work, and some of it always reminds me as far as the waivers, and I get some, you don't get some. It's like Lucy and Charlie Brown to football, I think, I don't know. That's a simpler way to put sometimes the legislative process.
Yes, yes.
It seemed like this week up in the state legislature is exactly the way it was with the CARES Act, especially.
Exactly.
CARES Act was,
Yeah, that's a tough one, right?
Yeah, I got Lucy just pulled the football out.
Right, exactly.
That's our
Charlie
darn Lucy.
Brown. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, another interesting thing on the yellow line, we had the sheriffs on the other day speaking, and it was the sheriff from Dakota County. And I must say, our sheriff has been great, looking at different ways to do things. Mm-hmm. But the sheriff from Dakota County said, we're going to have to look at our jails because they're going to have to function differently in the future. And he talked about the mental health piece and more social workers. So I think there's a great opportunity to look at all we do. But I mean, it's been interesting listening to different sectors of county government talking about the need for change and the way that we're probably never going to do things the way we did them in the past. Mm-hmm. Things are going to change.
Right.
So. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Phil.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Phil.
Our next talk is on authorizing a county ballot boards for absentee ballots.
Mr. Chair, did you want to do administrative services?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I jump?
It happens.
Excuse me, Chair, I think you're on the work session agenda.
You know what? I think, no. County ballot.
No, it's.
Normally, we would start with the county board minutes for June 9th.
Well, go ahead with the minutes.
I'll move the minutes, Langhammer.
People second.
You're right. I am so sorry. Any discussion on the minutes? Jesse, call the
Commissioner
roll.
People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. I jumped about 3 times here, didn't I? Okay, bills will be next.
Brunder will move the bills.
Purvis seconds.
Any discussion on the bills? I notice we're starting to get into our construction season, so we're getting a lot of the large ones coming from different construction projects across the county, but otherwise I don't see anything unless somebody else sees something. All right, Jesse, you want to call the roll?
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. Now, human resources.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 7 in your packet is the Human Resources Department agenda. We just have informational items for the board today. We had a promotion of Mr. Coriel, who's with us here this morning, from an ACA 1 position to an ACA 2 position. So
congratulations
to you. There was a voluntary demotion of the division chief in the assistant county attorney, or in the county attorney's office. And skipping down to item E, there also was a resignation of an assistant county attorney, and so there's been a little movement within the county attorney's office. Jumping back up to letter C, we did have a resignation of a custody officer, and so as the board is well aware, we have staffing levels we have to maintain there, so we have initiated recruitment of a custody officer. We also had a resignation of an on-call library clerk. That one we are planning to hold on any rehiring based on the flexible hiring freeze that we have in place. And then we had a resignation of a medium equipment operator in the Public Works Department, as well as a resignation of a financial assistance program coordinator in our Human Services Department. Both of those positions, I'll continue to have dialogue with the department heads to determine whether we move ahead with recruitment to fill those positions or not. So I'll provide updates to the board at a later date on those.
All right.
Be happy to answer any questions that the board might have on any of those issues.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, we had talked at one time of having a continuous list of people who were applying for the custody officer's position. Have we been able to maintain a list? Because it seems like it's kind of a revolving door.
We do have kind of an ongoing recruitment out there. The time from advertising to hire is quite long with all the background checks and psychological reviews that we do to ensure that they're folks that are qualified and able to perform that function. But you know, it has been challenging. It is one of the areas in the county where we do have significant turnover. We've dealt with that at the negotiating table and then tried to address it with some incentives there for longevity. We'll keep doing our best to figure out how to maintain that position. But quite frankly, it's one of those wage areas where in the community there are jobs in that same kind of general wage level, and being a 24/7 operation, it is a challenging recruitment area.
Yeah. It's not an easy job either.
No, it certainly isn't. And we've been hiring more law enforcement majors who maybe have more of a long-term career goal of being in a patrol environment. And so it is a stepping stone sort of position as well for a lot of the people we've been hiring lately.
Thank you.
And it's not an easy position to fill. I mean, being a jailer is a hard job.
Yeah.
So a lot of stress, a lot of, you know, so bless the people that are in there. And I think those of us that know the work, they do a very good job, and we appreciate the job they do. All right. Now we will go to the county ballot.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 8 in your packet is the resolution authorizing a county ballot board for absentee and uniformed and overseas citizens absentee voting. It's a long acronym there for you, but as we're entering the primary and general election period, recognize the need to authorize these ballot boards for absentee balloting. Obviously, in this environment, we're anticipating significant increases in our absentee ballots. And so we need to have a board established to review those absentee votes. And so this resolution would authorize the Property and Environmental Resources Department to bring that board together to make sure that we're processing those votes appropriately.
Oh, I suppose we need to move it first and then discuss? Or?
Yep.
Yeah.
You want to do that?
I'll move the resolution regarding authorizing county ballot boards for absentee. And
Brunder will second.
And a motion and a second. Now for your discussion, Mark.
Well, I was just more curious, you know, it's, how the Michael and how the county would come up with that board for the group of election judges and staff that figure that out for the balloting.
Yeah, I believe the plan would
it's hard,
be to utilize Property and Environmental Resources staff who are trained as election judges to make sure that there's an adequate trained supply of people on this board.
It mixes both major parties and all that involved. Yeah.
Certainly, we would look at that. That's one of the reasons why maybe more staff heavy, just kind of represent our nonpartisan point of view.
All right.
Mr. Chair, how is this different than how we've done this in the past?
Yeah, it was kind of when there was.
It really isn't. We actually had the board back in 2010 pass a resolution. We're really just updating that, given some of the security concerns that are in the media today. We felt it was important to bring it in front of the board, just to kind of reaffirm the process so people have that we have transparency to the public in terms of how this is set up.
Okay, yeah.
How
I'm
many,
comfortable with that.
Yeah.
how many of our townships are strictly mail-in ballots?
I don't have the exact number, but it's the majority. I think we only have a few remaining that are not.
Two?
One or two. Michael
One or
reported
two.
that last time he was here. But I don't remember what it was.
Now,
It's only
Yeah,
a
it
couple
was-
others.
and so they, on election day, they don't have, they've already voted, right?
Right, there is no in-person voting available in areas that are mail-in ballots only. We also, though, have, the early voting, so to speak, the early absentee voting, which will actually start here in the next week or so. And so all of that will be part of this process. So even though there is an option in, like the city of Mankato, for in-person voting, we anticipate that there's going to be a significant increase in absentee voting this year because of the pandemic.
What is the process, or is there a process to make the whole county a mail-in vote?
There was an effort in the legislature this year to increase mail voting. That did not pass. We have some small cities that would have indicated an interest in mail voting, but because of their population level, they were not allowed to.
So it's a population type thing. If you're over a certain, like 2,000 people or whatever. 400 people, you can't have, that's where the townships can do it, but the cities and like city of Mankato couldn't do it because it's got too many people.
That's correct.
And
I see.
Mr. Chair, as I understand it, any township can do it. But if you're a small city, you have to be under 400.
Okay,
I think
that's good to know.
And Skyline,
Skyline, we've been doing it for
Mark does
years.
it all the
Yeah.
time.
That's why, there's the talk more now with making it more widespread, but, and I didn't ask by the question, so we did that in 10, and that's a long time ago, though. That would also include Pemberton, I think, wouldn't it? Pemberton in that? I don't know if they're under, they could, I think.
I believe they are.
I don't think they're over 400 now, are they? I don't know.
Commissioner
Anyway,
Landcamer
make
is
two
right
cities.
about the townships. We did have Mankato Township just switch to a mail ballot for this election. So we are seeing more of our cities and towns interested in mail ballots, but statute would need to change in order to go as far as you're suggesting.
Yeah, that's what I say there. I think
With
Pemberton's
your
under 400.
knowledge, and maybe I'm hitting up our assistant county attorney with questions that he might not be able to answer. Have we ever, on our mail-in ballots, received any fraudulent votes?
How would he know that?
I know that it's,
You'll have to hit the little button on top. Yep. If it's green, it's on.
I know that our office works with the county administration to review potential cases of that. I can't speak directly towards whether there's been any examples or cases charged in in recent memory. But we do receive information that's evaluated in conjunction with the county to see if there's any fraudulent voting or inappropriate voting activity that does happen.
Right, I mean, and I know we've had cases where we've had fraudulent voting, but I was wondering if that if anything ever came back with the mail-in votes.
You know, Mr. Chair, I might suggest you hold that question for our work session. Michael will be coming in to talk about some elections, and he might
That's a
have more
good answer.
information
Good.
unless
Thank
Todd
you very
has
much.
any direct knowledge, but.
No, I do not, thank you.
All right, thank you, I'll do that. Any other discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. All right. Our next thing is application and permit for 1 to 4 day temporary on-sale liquor license for the Blue Earth County Fair Association. Bob, you want to explain this?
Sure, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, we did receive this request or application for a temporary liquor license from the Blue Earth County Fair Association. My understanding is that the Fair Association has decided not to hold the fair, but they're potentially going to have a grandstand event. My understanding is they're planning to address that tomorrow at a meeting that they're planning. But because of the timing related to the liquor license, if they should go ahead, they needed to move forward on the temporary liquor license in order to get the state approval that's needed. So we're maybe a little out of order here just because of the timing of our meeting and their meeting. But should they decide to move forward, they will need this temporary liquor license.
All right.
Purvis moves approval.
People second.
Got a motion and got a second. Any discussion?
Just a comment, I was confused also because I knew they had canceled the fair and I couldn't figure out why they needed this, but now I know.
Yep. And
They're remaining optimistic about, I think, the compact car races and the demolition derbies. They haven't said they're absolutely going to have it, but they're trying to be optimistic about the possibilities.
Yeah, and it's in an outdoor
Yeah.
venue, so it'd be easier to do something and not as much possibility of any issues with COVID or anything. So, all right. Any other discussion? Jesse, call the roll, please.
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye. All right. I think that brings us down to the end?
Commissioner reports.
I understand that, but I just want to make sure I got you covered.
That's all I have for you, Mr. Chair.
All right. So today I think we'll start with Mark. You want to start with your commissioner report for me, please?
Yes, I do the votes first, and I've been doing the reports first, so that's good. Okay.
Well, I kind of like to change it up a little bit.
Oh, you're not, yeah. Okay, let's see, Tuesday, the 10th, yeah, we had, Kip and I had the MICA Zoom meeting. Of course, we were separate there with, that was good. Of course, we had all the thoughts of like the CARES Act and everything, the waivers, all that going through, but anyway, June 14th, and I did have, that was a Sunday, the only day that worked, we did have our Partners for Affordable Housing Strategic meeting. That went okay considering, you know, it was virtual and it was not the normal way to try to do a strategic planning, but it's a sign of the times. June 17th, I did have a Minnesota Valley Council of Governments Zoom meeting, and that went well. People gave various reports on what their cities were doing. And then on the 18th, I did sit in there with the virtual meeting on the AMC on the executive meeting. And that was a Thursday, and that was interesting. And yeah, that actually concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
future meetings.
Commissioner Purvis. Yes, mine's relatively short. On the 9th, I had some South Bend Township Board meeting. I attended that, and there were some citizen concerns about a planning and zoning issue there. I'll be back tonight to finish that up. Then on the 10th, I attended the Fair Board meeting where they discussed the idea of not having the fair. Kelly Hader accompanied me from our staff and gave them some very good direction based on her knowledge of the COVID-19 situation, helped them make their decision. And then on the 18th, I had the extension, did a Zoom meeting on that. So that's my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Brunder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After the last board meeting, Mark already mentioned Micah. Yeah, we got a full report from everything that's going on up at the legislature and how they were working through some of them processes. Had a County Ditch 92 impoundment hearing discussion on the phone, but you already all heard about that. But the conversation went really well. Like Mark said, it was about a 2-hour meeting, so I think that saved us a little time here in the boardroom. Got a lot of questions answered and worked out. Had our South Central Workforce meeting, which obviously there's a lot of things going on there, trying to hit the mark on what's going to happen. Got a lot of people unemployed, but just not a whole lot of money coming in, and just a lot of challenges going to be coming forward for that organization in the future. We had our MVAC personnel and employment committee meeting. Just did some Head Start stuff, trying to get things geared up for next year. We were going to have our awards banquet in July, but we obviously canceled that due to the COVID outbreak. So that was kind of a letdown, because that is always exciting to they give out awards to all the people that are outstanding citizens and help out in the communities throughout the 9 counties. And we have a joint meeting, and it's a lot of fun, but they just decided not to do it this year because of all the stuff going on. Extension was already mentioned by Will. We had a great meeting. The staff did a great job doing the reports, and that was the night that it was hailing and storming out, and it was coming down pretty good, so we were all talking to each other about where the storm was. But the staff that presented to us all did a nice job with their PowerPoints and working through their agendas. And then I've just had some budget meetings and discussions with the county sheriff, and just regular drainage issues and some road projects that I'm working on. That brings me up to date, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Landcamp.
On the 10th, I had 1,000,000 Cups, which is all about economic development with MSU. Then you're going to hear this many times, the AMC Blue Ribbon Committee, and that day we talked about waivers. And then that evening, we had the Racial Equity Town Hall with the legislators. I know Vance was on, and Mark. Mark and I and Vance listened to it on KTOE. It was a good conversation, and I appreciated Representative Considine bringing up the yellow ribbon and the difference that's making. So I think that's a really good thing. On the 11th, I had a University of Minnesota event with Commissioner Jan Malcolm on COVID, the COVID issues and what's going on there. And then an AMC Health and Human Services Committee, and yet again we were talking about waivers and how we would try to move that through the legislature. And then later that day I had a NACO federal legislative update as to what's going on at the federal level. On the 12th, again, I had the AMC Blue Ribbon, where we talked about economic development in our communities and workforce. On the 15th, I had a meeting on community land trusts for housing, looking at different ways to do that. I think Mark's going to get involved in that too. It's the partners at Southwest Minnesota Housing, Partners for Affordable Housing, the multitude of people who do housing and how we work together. On the 16th, Vance and I had a transportation webinar on federal legislation and state legislation. And then later in the afternoon, Vance and I and Bob and Josh met with Bukata to talk about diversity and how as a community we're going to move forward with that. On the 17th, I had the RED Group, which is Regional Economic Development, Neil Kashkari, I never can say his last name properly. He's the head of the president of the Federal Reserve in Minneapolis. And he talked about where he saw the economic plan for the future moving forward. He thinks that it's going to be a really slow recovery. And so it's interesting, a lot of good questions, a lot of good comments. This is a group from across the state, and Landon and McKnight are the ones that kind of bring everybody together. That afternoon I had AMC Blue Ribbon Committee again, and that day it was the sheriff, the county attorney, and Mike Stahlberger talking about elections and recording and that type of thing. Yet another Blue Earth County person doing presentations. On the 19th, we had the AMC Board of Directors, and we had a big turnout on that.
Did pretty
Mark
good.
Vance Colleen. And Mike Stahlberger was on too because
Mike was on too.
he represents Mako. AMC Blue Ribbon Committee that afternoon talked about the courts. And the courts are going to be, we have another meeting with the courts, which is a separate subcommittee on Friday. And for those of you who watch Almanac, my brother Pat Kitchwich was on Friday night. So if you're interested in seeing him, I can send you the link. He talked about what's going on in Minneapolis and the law, public defenders, county attorneys, sheriffs, that stuff. I might be prejudiced, but I thought he did a fabulous job. Saturday, Jack and I did the march for the Juneteenth event down across the bridge down at the intergovernmental.
You got Jack going too.
I made Jack go with me. Yeah.
There you go. Good for you.
And we social distanced and wore our masks. So how's that?
Good for you.
And on yesterday, I had a state community health advisory committee meeting with Commissioner Malcolm and Governor Walz.
All right.
I'm done.
You're done. Well, our last board meeting was on the 9th. On the 10th, I started out with the District 2 meeting. And then, again, we had that webinar in the afternoon, diversity webinar. On the 11th, I had a District 3 meeting that I attended. I'm getting to like Zoom. Although my goal here this year was to camp across the state of Minnesota and go to these district meetings, but this saved a lot of money for gas and stuff. So, and then on that Friday, the last meeting of the year was the District 4 meeting, which is where the area that I grew up in, which is the Wilkin County, Otter Tail County. One very regular thing that I pulled out of all the district meetings, because we had a certain amount of questions and that AMC put up, is everybody commented on how well county staff is handling COVID, and how much every county just praises their staff. And I think that's got to be known, that county staff across the state of Minnesota really take issues like this and really step up and do a great job. And we know it ourselves how much our staff has stepped up to the bat and really taken this COVID issue, and that's happening across the state of Minnesota. On Monday morning, the 15th, Kip talked. We started with budget negotiations with Bob and Josh, and then next day we talked with the sheriff in his office with a budget meeting. Again, we had the transportation webinar that Colleen talked about, and then I met with Bukata that afternoon with Colleen and Bob, and so it's all positive. On Wednesday the 17th, I had a RAC webinar, and it was with the census, the Federal Census Bureau. I was able to get in a question in reference to our college students. And and I was told that the Federal Census Bureau has sent response to all the colleges asking them for the addresses of the students that were there on April 15th so we get a correct number from our college students. Otherwise, Blue Earth County and the city of Mankato really gets hurt by not, because all the college students are home. And when you have the amount of colleges, of course, MSU is the largest, but we have 15 to 17,000 college students across the city of Mankato and Blue Earth County. And if you lose that number, it really affects. But that's, he said there might be some issues with, with whether the colleges can give out that personal information or not, but they're working on that issue. Let's see, I had a TDS board meeting on the 18th, and then a transportation committee meeting in that afternoon. Of course, everything is through Zoom, I think that's understood nowadays. Our AMC board meeting on the 19th. My youngest grandson had his first communion on Saturday. And then this morning I had airport commission, and the folks out at the airport commission actually did a Zoom meeting, and I was very proud of them. They did a good job. So, and that's what I had at 7 this morning. So that's the end of mine. And Bob, unless you got something else,
Mr. Chair, I do not have anything else for the regular board meeting.
Do we adjourn or do we recess? Or I would say we probably adjourn and then go to our work session, correct?
Yes.
I asked for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move. People moves to adjourn.
Got a motion.
Landcamer seconds.
And we have a second. Is there any discussion? Jesse, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner People?
Aye.
Commissioner Purvis?
Aye.
Commissioner Brunder?
Aye.
Commissioner Landcamer?
Aye.
Chair Stuenberg?
Aye, and for those on the phone, we will be going to a work session. And the work session, you can call in. Actually, if you go on the county website and look for the meetings, there are phone numbers and access codes. And I would invite you to come and listen in to the work session. Thank you very much.
Down.